Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel on this beautiful Monday morning, the 9th of February 2026. Yes, we are driving closer to Valentine's Day. Any plans for Valentine's Day? Well, the only plot that I have on Valentine's Day is wishing my mate, Matovo Billy Matthew, a happy birthday. So that's the only plot I do have. But anyways, it's a beautiful and cloudy day, Monday morning here in Kampala, Uganda, where I do come to you live from. I do not know. Later on, maybe the skies will open up. Maybe the skies will close up. And if they open up, it could be rain or sunshine that comes out. We'll just have to wait and see what they will have for us in stock for the day. Otherwise, I hope you're doing well. I hope you enjoyed yourself over the weekend. For those of you that had challenges, we pray that you do overcome them. For those of you that had joy, we celebrate with you for whatever it is, for whatever the reason you may be celebrating. Like I said, we do return from a weekend of no short of controversy if you're a Premier League fan, but also we do come from a weekend that was filled with plenty of action. From Juventus mounting a perfect comeback to rescue a point after going 2-0 down, thanks to goals by Winston McKennie and Kalulu in stoppage time there in the Italian Serie A, to PSG thrashing Olympic Marseille by 5 goals to nil. Medina there with an own goal in one of those, while Ousmane Dembele picked up a brace, while Kvaratskhelia and Lee Kang-in were the other goal scorers on target. So, in the German Bundesliga, Bayern Munich put 5 past Hoffenheim, winning that game by 5 goals to 1, while in the Spanish La Liga, Real Madrid also won their game, beating Valencia by 2 goals to 0, thanks to strike by Alvaro Carreras as well as Kylian Mbappe. So, it was beautiful. Over in the Premier League, yes, Craig Paulson stole the show as Manchester City beat up against Liverpool by 2 goals to 1 at Anfield. Yes, it doesn't happen very often, and when it does happen, it is very special. I do not think it was special in a good way, given how the game was handled. But it's a game that will be remembered, and for Manchester City, they will care any less, because what they will count on are the 3 points and the significance of the victory that they managed to record on the day. And I do not think victories come bigger than that, because if you're Man City going into that game 9 points behind Arsenal, the objective was one: win the game and reduce the deficit from 9 points back to 6, and that's what they did. How they did it will be a story for another day. For Man City, for Liverpool, it will be a story to remember for the rest of the season, because it does put a dent in their ambitions to finish at least within the top 4. And speaking of the top 4, we'll be looking at some of the responsibilities, at least the major 3 teams that are vying for that top 4 finish will have, bearing in mind or considering relatively that perhaps the top 3 are almost guaranteed, not guaranteed, but almost. It will be the assumption. So if there is only one slot left to play for to attract UEFA Champions League football between Man United, Liverpool, and Chelsea, who will take it? Give me your thoughts. We'll be also discussing that as well in as far as this broadcast is concerned. So let me know where you're joining us from. For those of you that are just joining at the broadcast, I say good morning to you too. My name is Robert Kesakos. Do leave me a comment down in the comment section. Let me know where you're joining us from, and we will engage. I'll be reading your comments. I'll be going through all that feedback. Pedro says, welcome back, guys, to the Football Tribe UG channel on this beautiful Monday morning, my days. 38 minutes past 9 a.m. That's true. Hey, Pedri, how are you doing, my brother? How is Spain? How is your Monday morning? Have you grabbed yourself a cup of coffee, or it's your favorite pineapple juice that you are rushing to get out of the fridge this beautiful morning? I'm done with my tea, so I am already feeling a bit warm. Anyways, like I said, it was that kind of weekend. Beautiful action in the Italian Serie A, beautiful action in the German Bundesliga. in the French League One, in the Premier League, in the Spanish La Liga. Unfortunately for Pedri, while he wished us nothing but bad results, somehow Real Madrid managed to win with Kylian Mbappe putting the icing on the cake with that later goal to extend his personal tally, I think, to about 37 goals across all competitions this calendar year. Pedri says, yes, no coffee, no tea, only water and pure juice. Well, good for you. Good for you. I'm trying. I'm trying to have a change of diet to reduce on my sugar intake, but it's not easy or it's not that simple. But perhaps I need to be more intentional on that. Anyways, perhaps I should put up a poll question for this morning. I should put up a poll question. Do you think Liverpool should have been awarded a penalty versus Man City? So our options will be yes, oh, come on, no, and then, oh, Jesus Christ. Let me see. Okay, yes. That's the poll question for this morning. Do you think Liverpool should have been awarded a penalty in their loss to Man City yesterday? Do let me know what your thoughts are in that regard. Whether you think referee Craig Paulson should have awarded them a penalty. You say Real Madrid are so annoying. They will lose. They got my hopes up, and then I was like, I am actually stupid believing they will lose. Okay, now you know what happens. What happened with Valencia against Real Madrid? If we are going to start from the Spanish La Liga, there is that it's not unique to that particular game because small teams tend to do this. And I'm not saying Valencia is a small team, but given their recent history, where they've sort of fallen off the wagon, them and Sevilla, quite painfully, by the way, on my side, because when you want to have a competitive league, I used to relish in the fact that Sevilla, Valencia, and of course in recent times, in the last 1 decade, the addition of Atletico de Madrid and then Atletico Bilbao were those teams that were trying to provide more competition to Barcelona and Real Madrid. Of course, the other two remain miles apart in as far as competitiveness is concerned. And I think over the last 13 or so odd years, it's been Atletico de Madrid that have been the more consistent in challenging that dominancy of Barcelona and Real Madrid. So their sort of fall off is quite painful for me as a football fan, because I know what that sort of level, having that sort of level of competition means. We could see what they were able to do when they came over in Europe. You remember Sevilla winning the UEFA Europa League on 3 consecutive occasions. That is 2014, 2015, and 2016. And I think in 2015, they beat up against Liverpool on the final. Was it 3-1 when Jurgen Klopp had just come in? Of course, Unai Emery was in charge of that team. You look at Valencia and all their resources, they would come in the UEFA Champions League and do fairly well. Not very well, but fairly well. But now, in the last couple of about, I think, 4 or 5 years thereabout, Sevilla and Valencia have fallen off the wagon, and it's quite painful. I do not know what the actual reasons are, and perhaps Pedri, you could have more insight on this. You can let me know what have been the challenges of Sevilla and Valencia over the last 5 years that they have fallen so far down. I think for Sevilla have gone on to change managers, like they were, a very tidy man changing stockings. Valencia, Sevilla changing managers literally every now and then. Valencia, I understand finances are part to that. And last I checked, I think Valencia were building a new stadium, but read us in, Pedri. What are the key challenges for Sevilla and Valencia? Why have they fallen far behind? I mean, we've seen them through multiple seasons battling against relegation. Ronki, hi Ronki. Good to have you on the channel, Ronki. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel, even if I deem your comment a bit unkind, but it is what it is. So Pedri, let us know what are the challenges of those two teams. But like us ranking that point, usually these mid-table teams or small teams will come and put on quite the performance. They will come and try and put in a challenge or a shift against these big teams, but eventually they tend to fall away. The challenges are simple for all Spanish clubs. It is Tebas who is the problem. He doesn't want to allow transfer freedom. So according to him, to save them from bankruptcy, what a stupid reason. This makes them poor and only allows the big three to do a lot of business. We need a La Liga like the Premier League. So completely understood that. Thank you so much for that insight. And again, when you look at I think we were talking about this the other day when we were looking at the performance of our Premier League teams in comparison to the rest of Europe in as far as the UEFA Champions League's top 8 were concerned. And out of the top 8, you had 5 teams from the Premier League in Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham Hotspurs, Chelsea, and Manchester City, with only Newcastle outside the top 8. Then Spain were represented by Barcelona. You had Sporting CP represent Portugal, which is not even among the top 5 European leagues, because the top 5 are the Premier League, the Spanish La Liga, the Italian Serie A, the German Bundesliga, and the French League One. Then also, in addition to that, you had Bayern Munich from the German Bundesliga. So really, and that was the top 8. And we were trying to understand why the sudden sort of competitive advantage or more dominant performance are from the Premier League teams. Now, whereas finishing in the top 8 is no indication by a long mile that you will eventually go very, deep in the competition to reach maybe the quarterfinals and semifinals, but it does sort of set a signal, it does sort of send a signal in terms of what the Premier League could be building in terms of that, European dominancy. Can they take their domestic competitiveness onto the continent and things like that? So, but thank you so much for those insights. Last I checked, Sergio Ramos and I think a couple of other people were interested in buying off Sevilla. I do not know how further down that has gone the line, but I hope it all works out. Now, for me, and I said this sometime earlier on this season, I said there's no justification why a team, if they are struggling with finances, cannot be allowed to inject in direct cash like any other business. Because when you have a business that has performed well before, but then finds itself struggling, that's when businesses appeal for a government bailout. That's when businesses go and try to secure, a loan, or they can try and secure equity, they can try and secure an investor, an angel investor, or some form of shareholder to come and inject in some new cash to revamp the business. So I do not understand why now. Okay, in part, I understand the reservations of protecting the overall business, but how are you protecting the business if you're seeing it collapse and then the interventions that they would undertake are being curtailed by certain wars, So for me, it doesn't make much sense. But I'll leave that debate at that and move on. Moving on, like I said, in the Premier League on Super Sunday, Man City completed the league double as they beat up against Liverpool by 2-1 at Anfield. That game was marred by inconsistent refereeing decisions, with many Liverpool fans thinking or believing that at least they should have been awarded one penalty or even more in that particular game, because there were 2 incidents that were subject to penalty appeals. A pull by Bernardo Silva on Mohamed Salah, and later on one by Mark Cahill on the same player. But in both instances, the referee decided not to award the penalty, and the on-field decisions stood. And in the aftermath of that game, Anna Slot said they have been so unlucky with refereeing decisions or referees this particular season. And when he uses the word unlucky, that's what reminds us all that amidst all your hard work, in trying to win a Premier League title, in trying to win any league title, in trying to win any competition, you need a certain bit of luck. I mean, luck, for me, on top of your hard work, on top of everything that you ought to do right, luck comes in with getting the right decisions from referees. Luck would come in with the negation of a particular call, which is not good, against your opponent. Luck comes in when your opponents lose, So that's a part of what you need. So Arne Slot does feel that they've not had too much luck in as far as this campaign is concerned when it comes to refereeing decisions. So that victory sees Manchester City continue to breathe down under Arsenal's necks, like Pep Guardiola put it, because there's still 13 games left to play. Pedri comes in with a comment and says, in the UCL, Liverpool 1, Real Madrid 0, Chelsea 3, Barcelona 0, Man City 2, Real Madrid 1, Tottenham 2, Villarreal 0, Arsenal 4, Atletico de Madrid 0, Newcastle 1, Villarreal 0, Athletic Bilbao 0, Arsenal 2, Newcastle 0, Newcastle 2, Athletic Bilbao 0, Liverpool 3, 2, Atletico de Madrid. All these matches were this year in the UEFA Champions League. Do you notice something, Mr. Tribe? Yes, I do notice something. Is that Premier League teams gave Spanish La Liga teams a run for their money as they beat them. We beat Newcastle 2-1, which was the only Spanish side to beat a Premier League side. Again, yeah, that's that reminds me, by the way, you remember last season when PSG went on to win the UEFA Champions League title? In all their running after the playoffs, right from the round of 16 until the semi-finals, they beat Premier League teams. At the round of 16, they beat Liverpool. At the quarterfinals, they beat Aston Villa. At the semi-finals, they beat Arsenal. And that was quite telling. So, whereas one would try to justify and think it's a one-off, it's not a one-off. Let's not forget, last season at the quarterfinals, Arsenal knocked out Real Madrid. Real Madrid, at every start of every season of the UEFA Champions League, they are one of the favorites to win it. Why? Because they've done it more times than any other team. Actually, they've done it more times, double any other opponent. They've won it 15 times. I think the most successful other teams in there, at the likes of Liverpool, have won it 6 times. The Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, about 5 times, they're about 5 times, So when you take note of those particular trends, it's quite telling. And trust me, it's no coincidence. It's not a coincidence. It's not by chance. It's not miraculous that it's happened that way. And again, you remember when we were talking about the top 8, and I said I was surprised that a team like Newcastle at one point was within the top 8 and Barcelona weren't. A team like Tottenham Hotspur, who are struggling in the Premier League and are currently they could be around anywhere between 14th and 15th on the Premier League log, and yet they are, and yet in the UEFA Champions League they are looking brighter than anybody. They were outperforming Barcelona. They are outperforming Real Madrid. They are outperforming PSG. Now, one could. Yes, Tottenham are 15th of the Premier League log. Barcelona at the summit of the UEFA Champions League. Now, it's easy to justify it by saying, okay, look, you only played 8 teams out of the 36, but, and that doesn't tell the whole story. But trust me, if you play 8 teams out of 36, that is sample space good enough for us to collect some facts. If you're a researcher and you're looking at these trends, there's something to take away from that. There's something really to take away from that. You say, what a disgrace. You say, and what did they do after PSG bullied Premier League teams last year? They invest money. That is the solution, Mr. Tebas. So exactly. I think in the summer, Premier League teams spent about £3 billion on transfers. You remember Liverpool? They spent about 400 and 400 plus, actually 450 million quid on transfers. When you go to Arsenal, they spent more than 200. When you go to a team like Nottingham Forest, who finished 7th on the Premier League last season, they spent north of 200 million pounds. Man United spent money in the region of 200 million pounds on Benjamin Sesko, on Matas Cunha, on Brian Mbumo, on Seni Lomans, on Diego Leone. You know, look at Man City, how much they've spent over the last 3 transfer windows. That's in January 2025, in the summer, and January this year. It's no less than 400 million pounds. You know, it's no less than 400 million pounds. Of course, when you get to the net spend, they've had some player sales to try and balance the books for Man City, for Liverpool, you know, things like that. Look at Chelsea. They've spent, I think, close to 2 billion euros over the last 3 years on transfers. Like I said, then of course they let go of some players, you know, to try and balance the books. But they are spending the money. Look at Newcastle, how much they spent on Nick Voltmada, Yohan Wissa, Anthony Elanga. Yes, things are not going good for them, but they did spend the money. Look at Tottenham Hotspurs. They spent about 60 million on Xavi Simons. They've just spent 40 million euros on Conor Gallagher, you know? And they spent in the excess of 50 million pounds on Muhammad Kudus, you know? So, whereas in some cases, you may question the caliber of signings, or if you agree or disagree, but you cannot question that they are spending. Go to a team like Sunderland that were newly promoted when they brought in players like Noah Sadiki, Granit Xhaka, you know? I think, you know, they brought in so many players, good players, and that's why they're not even in the discussion about relegation. They are 9th on the Premier League table, unbeaten at the Stadium of Light. Their next game is against Liverpool, you know? So things are happening the way they are happening because teams are being intentional in the Premier League. They are spending the money, and the Premier League do spend the money more than any other league. Now, because every now and then you'll have a Real Madrid, you'll have a Barcelona, you'll have a Bayern Munich, and recently a PSG, and Inter Milan, as they come in every time in the season in Europe and win the Champions League and win the Europa League or any other European competition, it sort of masks the bigger picture for those leagues. Because at the end of the day, when you look around, let's say, I don't know, in the last 20 years or so, how many different Premier League teams have won the UEFA Champions League title? And how many different Spanish La Liga teams have won the European title? Let's look at the UEFA Champions League and the UEFA Europa League. How many French teams have done that? How many German Bundesliga teams have done that? You know, Mr. Tribe, do you want to make the Premier League game week match 26 predictions now or in the evening? Let's do them in the evening. Let's do them in the evening because that will be our preview. I will do them in the evening. You say all Tottenham transfers were flops. Just give this money to Villarreal and watch them become the kings of Europe. They will win just 5 UEFA Champions League in the next 5 years and can give some money to the homeless. Yes, like now that's questioning on the quality of spending or who they are spending the money on. But when you go through and scan through the last 20 years, and that means you're going to start from 2005. 2005 Liverpool win, 2006 Barcelona win, 2007 AC Milan win, 2008 Man United win, 2009 Barcelona win, 2010 Inter Milan win, 2011 Barcelona win, 2012 who wins the Champions League in 2012. Oh, how am I forgetting 2012? Because 2013 is when Bayern Munich win, beating Borussia Dortmund in the final. Then 2014 is Real Madrid. Oh, yes, 2012 Chelsea win, beating Bayern Munich in the final. So 2014 Real Madrid win. They beat Atletico de Madrid in the final. 2015 Barcelona win. 2016 Real Madrid beating Atletico in the final. 2017 Real Madrid win when they beat Juventus in the finals. 2018 Real Madrid win 3 consecutive years. 2019 Liverpool win. 2020 Bayern Munich win. 2021 Chelsea win. 2023 Man City win. 2024 Real Madrid win. 2025 PSG win. So you can see that Bayern Munich have won twice. Inter Milan have won once, which is the only title to go to the Italian Serie A. PSG won once. Barcelona won thrice, 2006, Barcelona won 4 times, 2006, 2009, 2011, and then 2000. Oh, yes, Real Madrid 2022. Then 2015 for Barcelona. Then Real Madrid, they win from 2014, 2016, 17, 18. They win 2022 and 2024, 6 times. Then English teams, you have Liverpool winning in 2005, Man United in 2008, Chelsea in 2012, Chelsea in 2021, Man City in 2023, and Liverpool in 2019. So you had 6 different teams from England win the UEFA Champions League. Barcelona and Real Madrid won it a combined 10 times out of the last 10 years. So that speaks to the level of competition that I was speaking about earlier on when I said, unfortunately, Sevilla and Valencia have fallen far off. And in those 10 wins, 2 of the wins were against a Spanish La Liga side. Of course, that was La Liga dominancy in 2014 and 2016 when Real Madrid win against Atletico de Madrid. So that in the Premier League, you have more teams vying to win the UEFA Champions League title, and you have 6 different teams that have won it. But French League 1, only 1 team. Italian Serie A, only 1 team. German Bundesliga, only 1 team has won it. And they've won it only twice. 2013 and 2020. So that should be able to tell us something. Yes. Okay, Chelsea win 2012, 2015, Barcelona, my love, yes, 3-1 against Juventus. I remember those goals from Neymar in stoppage time, Ivan Rakitic, and I think Luis Suarez. Then Man City, this is Pius. Hi, Pius, good morning, good to have you on the podcast. 2022 Real Madrid, you've got. Man City was white. Thank you, Pius. Where are you joining us from, Pius? Good morning. A pleasure to have you on the channel. So, guys, that was just an overview as we discussed the sort of fall of teams in the Spanish La Liga, and then trying to understand, make sense of the UEFA Champions League dominancy, or some of the teams that are dominating on Europe, where they come from and how many times they've been able to do it. How many different teams are you having in there? Because we always say, or people always seem to say that the Premier League is the most competitive. So having different UEFA Champions League winners from the Premier League is what tells you that. That while, of course, Real Madrid by their caliber, Barcelona have won more UEFA Champions League titles than any individual club in the Premier League in the last 20 years, it still tells you what domestically teams are going through, or the kinds of issues they're going through, you know. So, anyways, we'll leave that at that. Let's okay. Pedri says we deserved to be in the final last year. I always wake up and cry about it. It has been the closest we've been to the UEFA Champions League final since 2019, where we got knocked out harshly by Liverpool. Yeah, so many close calls. And I think as an Arsenal fan, on the other side, allow me wear my hat as an Arsenal fan and say, yeah, last season, we also thought it was our best opportunity to get to the final. And maybe we would have loved a final against Barcelona and have a repeat of what happened in 2006. Not in terms of the result, perhaps, but in terms of the fixture. But it was never meant to be. Footballing merit, PSG deserved to be the final. Footballing merit, yeah, Inter Milan deserved to be there. In some way, they had some luck to their side. But yeah, they did it. Got knocked out in 2024 only because of a red card versus PSG, 2 years in the UEFA Europa League, 2022-2023, after failing to qualify for the knockout stages. This is what all Barcelona fans experience all the time in the UEFA Champions League. So yeah, really. Anyways, guys, let's retreat back to the Premier League. We're talking about that game between Man City and Liverpool, which Man City won by 2-1. Like I said, there were 2 penalty appeals for Mohamed Salah, Bernardo Silva and Mark Guehi pulling Mohamed Salah. For me, I thought they should have gotten a penalty in that one, but they didn't. And it is what it is. But we can not just leave it at that, even though whatever we discuss will have no impact in change of result. And that's the unfortunate thing about the sport. Whether you have been genuinely robbed, whether you feel aggrieved, whatever happens behind closed doors or beyond the playing turf, the result does not change. Unless a game wasn't concluded, the result does not change. You know, it doesn't matter if the referee gives you 3 unreasonable red cards. That is a matter that will wait until another day. The result won't change. So in this particular case, Liverpool will feel hard done by, but the result won't change. They know that that game had top 4 at stake for them. And I said top 4 at stake for them is because they are one of the 3 teams fighting for a top 4 place finish. Now, assuming, and like I said, mark my words, assuming is a very big keyword there. Assuming Arsenal, Man City and Aston Villa go and lock themselves in on the top 3. That means you are left with 1 spot for the UEFA Champions League as things stand. There could be a possibility that whoever finishes 5th in the Premier League can also qualify for the UEFA Champions League. There could be a possibility that if the UEFA Champions League winner is from the UK, perhaps, a UEFA Europa League winner wins is from the UK, that they could also make it to the UEFA Champions League, the way we saw Tottenham come through this season to have 6 Premier League teams in the UEFA Champions League. All those assumptions are true. But as of now, it's 4 places. And you have 3 teams that are vying for those places. You have Manchester United, you have Chelsea and Liverpool. And Man United are currently sitting 4th, Chelsea 5th with only 1 point separating the 2 sides, and then Liverpool in 6th place with 4 points behind Chelsea in 5th place. So, of course, Brentford is also at 39 points. They could make a case for it, but for now, we'll leave them out of the discussion. So, Liverpool, in their aspirations to finish within the top 4, they will feel hard done by yesterday's decisions and by the final result. Now, of course, Dominic Szoboszlai went on and scored a wilder of a free kick. You know, this season, he's so far scored. I think about 3 goals or 4 direct from free kicks against Olympique Marseille in the UEFA Champions League, against Arsenal, and yesterday against Manchester City in the UEFA Champions League. I seem to remember there's another game where he scores from a free kick. I stand to be corrected, but at least I remember those 3 vividly, you know, where he's scored directly from a free kick. And it's been just impressive to watch. Those free kicks, particularly against Arsenal and yesterday against Man City, they're just impressive to watch. The Hungarian international is quite the game when it comes to dead ball situations. So he scores, and we all think, well, here we go, that. And I remember where I was watching the game from with a couple of colleagues. I did say, because at some point the game felt dull, I did say that the game needed a goal to spark it into life. And that's exactly what happened. Manchester City were dominant in the first half, Liverpool more dominant in the second half. And then in the 74th minute, from relatively within a similar distance to his free kick against Arsenal, Liverpool get the free kick and bang, hits it into the back of the net. Gianluigi Donnarumma was caught a statue in that moment. So ideally, it did not. And then Man City fight their way back. Of course, by that point, we had missed chances. Liverpool through Hugo Ekitike twice, Omar Mamush for Man City, Brad Erling Haaland for Man City. We had missed chances. Now, in the 84th minute, Bernardo Silva scores to pull one back, to restore parity in the game. And then in the 92nd minute, Man City win a penalty, which I think for me shouldn't have been a penalty. And I make that case particularly because the ball is gone. The ball is gone, There's nowhere Matthias Nunes is going to get that ball. There's nowhere he goes around. First of all, his first touch was terrible. And after making that bad touch, which sends the ball over the line to outside, then he makes contact with Alisson Ramsey-Specker. Now, you remember when I said, for me, it was a natural contact of two players coming together? Yeah, took that out of the playbook for the incident between Arsenal and Chelsea. Remember the penalty appeal from Gabriel Martinelli on the tackle from Trevor Chalobah late in that game? Well, it was ruled, including by VAR, that it was natural contact in the aftermath of a tackle. In this particular case, Alisson has already come. So it's a coming together of two players, basically. So for me, it's not a penalty. But then Bernardo Silva's blatant pull on Mohamed Salah, whether you think that pull is not strong enough, because the strength is always subjective. It is always only felt by the person in the act of pulling and the one being pulled. The person pulling knows the amount of pressure or strength that they apply to the pull. And the one it is being applied on is the one that gets the impact. And remember, any player that is in motion is always vulnerable. A simple trip, they hit the ground. A simple pull, they could go to the ground. Or you impede them. It's that impediment, for me, that is as blatant, that it should be a penalty. But Craig Pawson decided it is not a penalty. Then McGahey pulls Mohamed Salah so much so that he tears his jersey. And yet the referee still thought, nah, we're not giving that one. According to Anna Slot, that should have been a red card for McGahey. And there seems to be a lot of other people other than Anna Slot that have the same school of thought. Now, you remember, after their 2-2 draw, Man City and Tottenham, when Rodrigo Cascante Hernandez came out to criticize the referee, saying he was not neutral and that Dominic Solanke's first goal shouldn't have stood because he fouls McGahey, rightly so. It was the correct thing to, it was the correct observation. But like I said then, he did not have the moral authority to be making those comments. Look at yesterday. I dare Rodrigo Cascante to review yesterday's incidents and come out with a statement to say the referee was neutral. I dare him, or to come out and say, yeah, we won the game, but yeah, the referee was not neutral. So, like I keep saying, It's oftentimes convenient or easy for us to justify when decisions go our way, even when they are unjust. And as soon as they go against us, that's when we feel the pain. That's when we want to critique it all. Now, for me, I say, let's all be fair to the game, because an injustice on one of us should be an injustice on all of us. Today, it's Liverpool suffering. Yesterday, it was Man City. Yesterday, it was Tottenham benefiting. Today, it's Man City benefiting from that injustice. So for me, that's how I sliced it. And then we had the red card incident by Dominic Szoboszlai. I've seen comments from Gary Neville with no particular paraphrasing or exact quote, but somewhere in the region of that there's no sane person in football that cancels that goal. That cancels that goal. Now, two things happened. One, is it a goal? Yes, Chucky's goal. Pedri Bola is saying Chucky's goal. Now, two things happened, and let's look at the events in their chronological flow. And why, for me, it was the right decision to make for Szoboszlai to be given a red card, and even for the referee to be summoned to the monitor. Why? Dominic Szoboszlai impedes a speeding Erling Haaland from getting to that ball to score. And him being the last man, he denies a clear and obvious goal-scoring opportunity. So that's a red card in the playbook on any given day. Not debatable. Now, two, after being impeded by Dominic Szoboszlai, Erling Haaland also impedes Dominic Szoboszlai from getting to that ball. In other words, none of the two players get a touch on the ball from Ryan Chucky. Szoboszlai is trying to stop it, but Erling Haaland was running to help it get cross over the line much quicker. Now, because the incidents between Erling Haaland and Dominic Szoboszlai happened before the ball crosses the line to hit the back of the net, that's why that action takes precedence. Now, the argument for people that think the goal should have stood are laying on table is simply because the two players do not have a touch on the ball, they have both fouled one another, and the goal has still gone in anyway, then it should be played as an advantage. But you see, when you play it as an advantage, which you could, you then cannot give Dominic Szoboszlai a red card for impeding Erling Haaland from scoring. So that means Dominic Szoboszlai walks away with it. Would it have been the right decision? Like I said, if we want to be just and fair to the game, then that wouldn't have been just. Szoboszlai ought to have been penalized for what he did because he knew what he was doing. Two, the other scenario, and I say this, if the only way you do not penalize Dominic Szoboszlai is if in his attempt to impede Erling Haaland from getting to that ball is futile, but nonetheless, he does just enough to delay him, and the ball crosses over the line before he gets to it. In other words, Szoboszlai pulls Erling Haaland. Haaland uses his strength to escape away from Dominic Szoboszlai, but still does not get to the ball, and it eventually crosses the line. Then it's a Ryan Chucky goal, then it's an advantage that you play on, then you ignore the Szoboszlai incident. But because Szoboszlai was successful in impeding Erling Haaland, then it's a red card. Now, whatever happened after Haaland being impeded, and by that I mean Erling Haaland pulling Szoboszlai, impeding him from clearing that ball, is a non-issue. That's how I'll put it, you know. But The referee, Craig Paulson, could have done 1,000 times better than he did yesterday. He painted himself in no glory whatsoever. And he will be very lucky to get a match to officiate for match day 26, which match day 26 starts on Tuesday through Wednesday and until Thursday when Arsenal play away to Brentford. So I thought those were key moments in that game. You know, those were key moments in that game. The Premier League in general, in as far as match day 25 was concerned, of course, everywhere there is joy in football, there's tears somewhere. It kicked off on Friday night, match day 25, when Leeds United beat up against Fulham by 3-1 to brighten their chances, that's Leeds United, of staying in the top flight. Because that result gave them 3 invaluable points. 3 invaluable points. After losing to Arsenal by 4-0 the previous weekend, they were desperate for a result because they were on level with points as Nottingham Forest. So winning that game to go 3 points ahead of Nottingham Forest and level on points with Tottenham Hotspurs eventually was critical. Then on Saturday in the early kickoff, Manchester United beat up against a 10-man Tottenham Hotspurs by 2-0. I think, and I stand to be corrected, they were keeping their 3rd clean sheet of the season. The other 2 coming against Manchester City and Sunderland, all in 2-0 victories. In winning that game, it means Michael Carrick has guided Manchester United to 4 consecutive victories ever since taking charge as the interim head coach for Man United. He is auditioning for that job. You know when you get a job in a new workplace and you're given a contract of 3 to 6 months as probationary period, that's what Michael Carrick is going through. He's doing his probation. React to Sao Paulo song, RN, Sao Paulo song. Pedro Bola, I'm not familiar with the song, unfortunately. So I may not be the right person to give you the right reaction or review or insight about the song that you're making reference to. So accept my apologies on that one. Accept my apologies on that one. You say The Weeknd and Anita. Okay, I'll look into it. I'll try and see if I can look it up. But yeah, so Man United have been perfect. Manchester United and Chelsea are the only 2 teams in the Premier League to have won their last 4 games consecutively. They are the 2 most on-form teams in the Premier League. And in addition to those 2, in Chelsea and Man United, next to them you'll find a team like Bournemouth have won 3 and drawn 2 in their last 5. Man United's next game is going to be against West Ham United on match day 26 in midweek. Today we'll be putting out a video. I think it should be coming out at around 11 a.m. about Manchester United. And the question that we attempt to answer is who will stop Manchester United? Because the advantage for Manchester United is that they're only playing in one competition. Can Man United win 5 games in a row? That's the hope. And yes, they can. If we are going to go by the trend of results that they've recorded in the last 4 games, they most definitely can. They are beaming with confidence. They are beaming with aura. They are beaming with optimism. They are beaming with faith. They are playing for the manager who, when you have a strict teacher, for those of you that have been to school, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in my experience, one, you had math teachers or algebra teachers, for those of you that call it algebra, who are oftentimes very tough. And then you had English teachers or language teachers who are often more soft and kind. So in this particular case, Michael Carrick is the English teacher. He's soft and kind. The players like him, the same way the students like the English teacher. Ruben Amorim was the math teacher, was the teacher of algebra. Students do not like him. He is often looking tough and gloomy, doesn't smile much, is too critical, and that kind of thing. Now, I've said this before. What Michael Carrick has changed at Man United, it's not been much. He's not changed much. He's simply taken the team back to basics. Play with the back four, play every player in their rightful position. Luke Shaw at left back. Fortunately for him, Luke Shaw has been fully fit. Diego Dalot at right back. Harry Maguire, Lisandro Martinez in the center back. Of course, Senny Lomans in goal. Play Kobe Mainu. Play Casemiro alongside Kobe Mainu instead of Casemiro alongside Bruno Fernandes. Play Bruno Fernandes in the number 10 role. And on you go. Then you have a Matthias Cunha, you have an Amadou Diallo, and Brian Mbeumo. Or in that sort of setup. And they've been winning games. How have they won games? Quite different fashions. Man City versus Man City, purely counter-attacking football. Versus Arsenal, less of the counter-attacking football. Survived the first half an hour in which they conceded. Then they grew in confidence. Arsenal make a costly mistake. It's 1-1. Second half, Patrick Dogu scores a welter because Arsenal failed to close him down. Concede a second through Mikel Merino. Set piece goal, scramble, goes in. Then believe that you can actually still win even after the opponent has scored. Now, I said this, the most time any team is most vulnerable to conceding a goal is when they've just scored. Why? There's that bit of disorganization. There's that bit of celebratory mode, you know? As soon as a team has conceded, they are more vulnerable to conceding. That's why against Arsenal, it was the match-winning goal by Matthias Cunha came only about 2 or 3 minutes after Arsenal had scored the equalizer. In that 3-2 victory against Fulham, that winning goal by Benjamin Sesko comes relatively anywhere about 2 or 2.5 minutes after conceding the equalizer through Kevin. So they know that, and they have that momentum. They have that feel-good factor. Then the other very, very important issue is that Man United only have one competition to worry about. And to them, it's not a competition per se. You know, when you're so bad at something, every time you do it the right way, feels like an enormous win. I'll give you an example. If you've had, let's say you are doing a driving test, and every time you did it, you are failing it. The day you pass it, you're going to feel overjoyed. Now, Man United have been failing their bad driving test. Then they got a new teacher, a new instructor, and then they started passing. So they are feeling good about themselves. So for them, it's about keeping up the momentum. Like I said, Man United have zero pressure whatsoever. Top 4, they are already in the top 4. They are only 3 points behind a third place Aston Villa, for whom they are now better than when it comes to goal difference because they have a +10, Aston Villa have a +9. You know, Man City is only 6 points ahead of them, as is Arsenal ahead of Man City. Now, if you're Man United, you're not gunning for Man City. Now, you're gunning for Aston Villa, who are in third place. Take it one step at a time, and they're going to do that, you know? So, and look at their next fixture. It's against West Ham. West Ham is one of the worst sides in the Premier League this season. They've only recorded 6 wins, 5 draws, and 14 draws. And 14 losses throughout the entire campaign. They concede so many goals. I think only Burnley have conceded more goals than West Ham, because Burnley have conceded 49, West Ham and Wolverhampton Wanderers have both conceded 48. So that tells you what? That West Ham are poor. While in the last 5 fixtures, they've managed to win 3 and lost 2. They are very vulnerable to losing. So United are capable of having their Manchester United, their fan, who has not cut his hair in more than a year cut off his hair when they win their fifth consecutive game against West Ham in midweek this week. Now, speaking of the top four, like I've told you, it's Man United, Chelsea, and Liverpool that in pursuit of that. Here are the responsibilities in regards to the next 6 fixtures for the teams pursuing the top four. Man United in 4th place play West Ham they play away to West Ham. Excuse me. After which they will play away to West Ham. After which they will play away to Everton. Then after they'll play away to Crystal Palace. Sorry, they'll play at home against Crystal Palace. Then they'll play away to Newcastle. We saw Newcastle losing to Brentford over the weekend by 3-2. Then they'll play at home against Aston Villa and then away against Bournemouth for the next 6 fixtures for Man United. Now, whereas on paper, some appear to be difficult games, which they are, all are Premier League games, but those are winnable fixtures for Man United's quality and caliber. 2, some of these teams have the FA Cup to worry about. When I say worry about, is that they still want to go to the next stage in that competition. We are going to be at the 4th round. United are not playing in the FA Cup. They got knocked out by Brighton. Now, Chelsea have Leeds at home. They have Burnley at home. They have Arsenal away from home. Now, prior to their game against Wolverhampton Wanderers, I said Chelsea must win their next 3 games without any excuse whatsoever. And they beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-1 over the weekend, with Cole Palmer scoring a first half hat-trick in that game. Because after those 3 games against Wolves, Leeds, and Burnley, all 2 of which are in the bottom 3, then they play away to Arsenal and away to Aston Villa. Those will be difficult games. I'm not saying they cannot win them. I'm simply saying they will be more difficult to handle than the earlier 3 or 2. Then after Aston Villa, they'll play at home against Newcastle and away to Everton. So that's their next 6 fixtures. Then Liverpool in midweek, match day 26, play away to Sunderland. Then they will travel away to Nottingham Forest, a team that beat them by 3-0 at Anfield this season. Then they will return at home to play West Ham United. Then they will play away to Wolves, return home to Tottenham Hotspur, and play away at Brighton. That's for the next 6 fixtures of the respective 3 teams that are pursuing the top 4 place finish in Man United, Chelsea, and Liverpool. So the question is going to be, who will come out on top? Liam Senior has won every fixture in his management in the FA Cup, in the Premier League, and the UEFA Champions League ever since he took charge. 4 consecutive wins in the Premier League, 2 in the UEFA Champions League, and 1 in the FA Cup. That's 7 out of 9. He's only lost 2 games, and those were against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup semi-finals. Home and away, he lost 3-2 and 1-0 respectively, to be knocked out 4-2 on aggregate. So really, he's been impressive. Man United, we've just talked about Michael Carrick, what he's been able to do in the last 4 consecutive games. Liverpool, on the other hand, they've had their struggles and wobbles. After 4 consecutive draws, they lost to Bournemouth by 3-2. Last weekend, they thrashed Newcastle by 4-1. And this weekend, they lost to Man City by 2-1. So it couldn't have been more turbulent for Liverpool. And Liverpool this season have been far from what we expected them to be. While they have the quality, they still lose games literally for fun. Literally for fun. So, and I'm not saying yesterday that was intentional, but yeah. So that's the rest for the top 4. Apologies, needed stretching a bit. Now, let's go to the top 2. Arsenal and Manchester City. Like I said, with Manchester City's victory, they reduced the point gap between them and Arsenal from 9 to 6. And in the aftermath of that game, Pep Guardiola said, all we can do is breathe down the neck of the Arsenal. Speaking on what he thinks about his side, he said, we are 6 points behind Arsenal. Okay, it is a big gap, but many things can happen. So it's better to have the 3 points. Who knows if 6 points is enough for Arsenal? But 13 games is a lot, and the FA Cup is coming, the Carabao Cup Final 2, the UEFA Champions League. The UEFA Champions League is back in March, and injuries will happen. He adds on to say there are also other teams playing for things, European positions, fighting against relegation and playing against teams in a relegation battle means they are trying a lot to survive, and it is a proper game. He goes on to add that, so 13 games, from my experience, is a lot of time. It is so difficult, but the important thing is to be there. All we can do is breathe down the neck of Arsenal, being there and try if they sleep. If they make a mistake, use it. We have to play Arsenal at home, so of course we have to beat them. So the writing is on the wall. Pep Guardiola knows what's at stake. He knows what they need to do. He knows they need to avoid any form of slip-ups. And in the race to the Premier League title, psychologically, mentally, everything you may call it, that victory against Liverpool gives Man City more fuel than we could care to admit, than any other side would have afforded them. 2, they have started to welcome back some players from injuries. Yesterday, we saw the return of Ruben Diaz. He had been on the bench for their 3-1 victory against Newcastle. That was on Wednesday in the return leg of the EFL Cup. Savinho is bound to return. Jeremy Doku back to return. Remember, Jeremy Doku was the star player in that 3-0 victory for Man City over Liverpool in the first leg at the Etihad Stadium. Yesterday he was absent, So they're going to welcome back players from injury at the likes of John Stones, and those could be the difference. Whereas with 6 points ahead, one would argue that the title is for Arsenal to lose. We know anything can happen. Like I keep saying, it could be a bad referee decision that costs you a game. And your opponents won't care. History won't care. So basically, that's it from that side. In as far as match day 26 is concerned, we'll be here tonight. That's at 11 p.m. East African time to digest some of these games. It kicks off tomorrow at 10:30 p.m. Chelsea play at home against Leeds. Everton at home against Bournemouth. Tottenham at home against Newcastle. While at 11:15 p.m. Man United play West Ham United. That's on Tuesday. On Wednesday at 10:30 p.m. you'll have 4 games. Aston Villa at home against Brighton, Burnley away to Crystal Palace, Fulham away to Manchester City, while Nottingham Forest will be at home against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And at 11:15 p.m. Sunderland take on Liverpool. And on Thursday, Brentford will be at the GTEC Stadium against Arsenal at 11 p.m. So those will be the games for match day 26. But on Wednesday, the subsequent week, the 18th of February, Arsenal will be in action against Wolves. That will be the only midweek Premier League game, because in between Thursday and next week, Wednesday, will be the FA Cup over the weekend. So that's why. Please take note of that. Anyways, away from the shenanigans of the Premier League. Like I told you, for Real Madrid, Alvaro Fernandez Carreras and Kylian Mbappe squad as Real Madrid won away to Valencia by 2-0. Antony made the difference as Real Betis beat Atletico de Madrid by 0-0. Girona and Sevilla shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw. Athletic Bilbao beat up against a 10-man Levante by 4-2. Getafe beat up against Deportivo Alaves by 2-0. In the Premier League, earlier on Sunday, Crystal Palace beat up against Brighton by a goal to nil. That goal scored by Ismail Sarr with Ivan Guessant providing the assist. So it looks like things were good for Oliver Glasner. I just felt it that Crystal Palace were going to win that game, even though my prediction had been 2-1 for Newcastle. Anyways, in the German Bundesliga, RB Leipzig beat up against Cologne by 2-1, while Bayern Munich put 5 past Hoffenheim. Luis Diaz with a hat-trick, while Harry Kane scored 2 penalties. There, in the Italian Serie A, Parma lost to Bologna by a goal to nil. Udinese lost to Lecce by 2-1, while Sassuolo got their AWS handed to them in a 5-0 thumping at the hands of Inter Milan. Lautaro Martinez among the goal scorers in that one, as well as Yannick Besic, Marcus Thuram, Manela Kanji, and Luis Enrique. Then Lazio conceded a 2-0 lead as they shared the spoils with Juventus in a 2-2 draw, with Winston McKennie and Kalulu, the goal scorers in that one. AC Monaco and Nice shared the spoils in a goalless draw, as did Auxerre and Paris FC, while Angers beat up against Toulouse by a goal to nil. Le Havre beat up against beat up against Strasbourg by 2-1, while Paris Saint-Germain put 5 past Olympique Marseille. Ousmane Dembele with the breast, Kivica Kvaratskhelia, Lee Kang-in, and an own goal by Medina were enough for PSG, the league leaders in the French Ligue 1, to cruise to victory. So those are the results from across the different leagues for Super Sunday. Then the comments from Pep Guardiola and things like that. So for those of you that have been part of this morning's podcast, Pedri Bola, then Pedri, Pius, thank you so much. Thank you all that have been part of this morning's podcast. I want to wish you a blessed day, a wonderful rest of the week, and until next time, always a pleasure. See you guys tonight when we go into the preview of some of those games, as well as our predictions. Bye-bye for now.